utter failure. Senator Blumenthal.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Just so the American people understand, this issue of weaponization of justice goes to the core of the integrity of our criminal justice system. And I think we can all agree that no individual, no group should be targeted simply because they are a political opponent or because the President of the United States has some personal animosity toward them. You've just said that President Trump is the most transparent president in history. Tragically and chillingly, you may be right when it comes to criminal justice, because far from ending weaponization of justice, I would submit, Madam Attorney General, that President Trump has embodied it. And we have a record. It is a public record of his express instructions that certain individuals be investigated. The Attorney General of New York, Tish James, my colleague Adam Schiff, the former CISA director, Chris Krebs, the DHS former Chief of Staff, Miles Taylor. There's a list. And he has been transparent. In fact, 5 days before the indictment of James Comey, he put this post up as instructions to you. He didn't mince words. He was very open and public that you should indict James Comey and others because they are guilty as hell. No more delay. Now, 5 days before you indicted, or grand jury at your instructions indicted James Comey. I'd like to know from you what conversations you've had with President Trump about the indictment of James Comey.
Senator, I am not going to discuss any conversations I have or have not had with the President of the United
States. See that
you're an attorney, you have a law degree, and you know that I'm not going to do that. I also find it fascinating, because I'll keep fighting to ensure that law enforcement and the judicial process move forward without political interference. No one is above the law, not even the president. That's a quote from you, Senator Blumenthal.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. I just love this, right? Like, they're always trying to say, oh, it's political retribution. We were talking about this yesterday, but guess what, folks? Guess what? When you break the law, when you fabricate evidence against somebody, right? This is what happened with Tish James, as a matter of fact, essentially, right? Let's say there's this stop sign over here, right, that everybody always runs. Everybody. Right, and you're sitting in a line of cars. There's several cars. I don't know. Pick a number. It doesn't matter how many. Right? And they're all running this stop sign. They'll kind of slow down a little bit, treat it like a yield sign, and then just take off, take off, take off, take off. Boom, 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 boom. One after another after another. You get up close to this stop sign, and you look over to your left, and you see, hang on, there's a cop sitting right there. Holy crap. But you're like, hang on, all these people just ran that stop sign. I'm going to go ahead and do that too. You run the stop sign, get pulled over. And you're like, what in the hell? All these other people were running the stop sign. Why are you giving me a ticket? And that cop tells you, well, it's because your name is such and such. That's why. That's what happened with Tish James, as a matter of fact, and Donald Trump. Everybody, there was no crime there, as a matter of fact. We look at all the evidence, there was no crime, but they said, you know what, we're going to fabricate this. We're going to pretend that Donald Trump knew for a fact that he was lying on his loan statements or whatever. I forget all the details. We're not going to rehash that because this is just the intro. And then guess what? The supposed victim comes in and testifies and says, no, if you look right down here at the very bottom, it says, we need to do our due diligence. We did our due diligence. We showed them the error of their ways. And we also responded accordingly and said, no, we're not going to give you that much. We're going to give you a little bit less. And they decided to charge him anyway. That is what we have going on here. And now Letitia James did the exact same thing. So Donald Trump says, hang on, we're going to go after you. Guess what, folks? This is a long intro. I know, I'm sorry. But check this out. Oh, yeah. Indicted, folks. Y'all make sure and smash that like button for me. Subscribe if you're new around here. Share this video anywhere and everywhere you can. Click the join button. Sign up and become a member. And here you go. Here's the rest of the hearing.
In 2017.
Well, let me ask you then. When you saw that
No
post,
one is above the law. That was your quote.
When you saw that post, did you talk to anybody in the White House?
I am not going to discuss any conversations I have, nor any investigations,
So
nor
you were unwilling to
any
tell
pending
this committee
cases.
about conversations with the White House
And if I
regarding
may
James
continue,
Comey's indictment.
and if I may
Let me
continue,
show you a picture.
James Comey was indicted by one of the most liberal grand juries in the United States.
The night before James Comey's indictment, you had dinner with the President of the United States. Pretty intimate group.
Actually, there
James
were a lot of
Comey
people there that
discussed-
night. That's
was
a great
James
picture.
Comey discussed at that dinner?
I love that picture. That's a great picture. And there were a lot of people there that night. I think the
Well-
entire cabinet was there.
Did you discuss James Comey with the President of the United States? He was sitting just to your left.
Well, 2 seats down, yes, 2 seats down. And I am not going to discuss any
I'm going to take
conversations
that
I have
as a
had or not
yes,
have with the
because
President
the
of the
American
United
public
States.
is entitled to know, Madam Attorney General.
The entire cabinet
whether
was at that
you
dinner,
took
too,
instructions from President Trump after he told you very directly to indict James Comey, which is weaponization of the Department of Justice.
Oh,
You know,
wait.
I want to agree with my colleague, Senator Hawley, that weaponization of our justice system must end. That's the reason that I propose legislation, and I challenge him and my colleagues on the other side of the aisle to join me in legislation that would create a statutory right of action for people who are selectively or maliciously prosecuted for political reasons. It would codify your manual, the Department of Justice manual, on political prohibitions against political considerations in charging decisions and prohibit the White House from intervening, President Trump and any other president from intervening in charging decisions. It would make reforms to the grand jury process. You've just said this grand jury was liberal. We should reform the grand jury process to ensure that the government is not abusing its power and authority, and it will require transparency and accountability reforms at DOJ so that you will and other attorneys general be held accountable for these kinds of decisions. Will you join me in supporting that kind of reform?
Senator Blumenthal, I find it so interesting that you didn't bring any of this up during President Biden's administration when he was doing everything to protect Hunter Biden, his son. And I think you just saw what Director Radcliffe just released.
You know, this is an effort to be positive.
If I can finish
and
answering the question, I'm not going to
Attorney
yell
General.
over you. I'm not going to get in the gutter with you. But information that the Biden administration told them not to investigate Hunter Biden's involvement with Ukraine. I'm not going to be lectured to you about integrity
another topic,
by
and I'm hoping
someone
that you will review
who
these
lied about
legislative
being in the military just
and
to be
support
elected
them.
a senator.
The merger between Hewlett-Packard Enterprises and Juniper Network was settled. You authorized the settlement. It was the subject of a lawsuit to block it. The settlement produced virtually no concessions from Hewlett-Packard. It was a settlement that prompted criticism from the Antitrust Division. Did you authorize that settlement yourself?
As I stated earlier, Gail Slater is doing an incredible job running the antitrust unit. And as I stated earlier, that is still a pending matter, as
Well,
you
you
should know
then
with a law
fired,
degree,
did you not,
that all
two-
mergers, if I can finish answering the question.
I'm going to,
If I
with
could
apologies,
finish. No, I'm
interrupt
answering
you
the question.
because my time is
No,
limited.
well then don't ask me a question. So,
Let me just ask you,
as I said, you have a law degree. You know that not only are mergers agreed upon, but they have to go to a court of law to be approved. It's a multi-step process. And as I said earlier, that is still pending. And I have full faith in Gail Slater.
And Ms. Slater reportedly objected to the settlement.
Reportedly,
And moreover,
moreover.
2 of her top officials were fired, Roger Alford and Bill Sinner. Did you authorize and direct those firings after they objected to the settlement?
I am not going to discuss personnel matters or pending litigation in my office.
Let me ask you about another merger. The merger involving 2 home health care agencies on favorable terms, likely to drive up costs for millions of America. The Transportation Department's rule to provide compensation to travelers impacted by airline-caused flight delays, which was canceled. The merger of Skydance and Paramount, after Paramount's ownership took a number of steps favorable to the president. These kinds of mergers belie the claims that President Trump himself has made, that this administration will stop big corporate mergers that ultimately benefit the owners of those corporations rather than consumers or ordinary, everyday Americans.
Senator,
and let me ask you
wait,
about
you just listed, you just gave a
Well,
list
let me just finish.
of many mergers.
I have a
Can
question
you
for
talk
you.
to me about the issue with these mergers?
I do have a question. In the merger that took place,
Which
that was
merger? You've
approved
listed many.
involving American Express GBT. I understand that Brian Ballard,
Oh.
longtime backer and head of the law firm where you worked, was instrumental in lobbying the Justice Department to drop that lawsuit. It was dismissed, so it's not subject to a court review. What conversation did you have with Mr. Ballard?
Senator Blumenthal, I cannot believe that you would accuse me of impropriety when you lied about your military service.
I am
you
not
lied.
asking
You
you.
admitted you
I am
lied
not
to be
accusing you
elected
of
a U.S. senator.
impropriety. I'm
You
asking
lied.
you
How
about
dare you? I'm a
conversations
career prosecutor.
with Mr.
Don't you
Ballard,
ever challenge my integrity.
had
I have
apparently-
abided by every ethics standard. Do not question my ability to be fair and impartial as Attorney General, and anything
You'll
with
answer that
my
question to
former
another of my
firm,
colleagues.
Ballard Partners.
Thank you.
So I'm going to use Cenk Uygur's term here. This guy is absolutely a freaking corporate robot. That's all he's doing. He's reading off a script, does not know what the hell he's talking about. Did you see he did not even respond when Pam Bondi said, you lied about your military service to get elected? Love that. But look, the evidence for corporate roboticism, if you will, right? The dude's talking about the merger between, asking Pam Bondi about the merger between Skydance and Paramount. Well, that, my dude, if you knew what the F you were talking about, you would know that that falls strictly under the purview of the FCC. Pam Bondi has nothing to do with this. Sure, it must go through the courts, but once again, the FCC litigate those issues right there. Like, I just love this. Like, he has no substance whatsoever. None of that had any sort of substance at all. They continually talk about the weaponization of the federal government, of the Justice Department in particular. They use Donald Trump statements as evidence, right? But did they do that with Joe Biden? No, they did not do that with Joe Biden. Joe Biden absolutely did that, and we saw the fabricated evidence. We saw the fabricated charges against Donald Trump. They would take something as simple as falsifying business records, folks, a simple mistake, and ramp that up to a felony, 34 freaking counts, and then a jury is instructed to go into multiple choice territory, A, B, or C. You pick the underlying crime to elevate a misdemeanor to a felony because we have to stop Donald Trump from getting elected. That's what that was all about, folks. So you get to pick, and you don't even have to agree. You few over here, you can pick A, you can pick B, and you guys can pick C. Doesn't matter. Right? And then once again, what's the fascinating aspect to all of that is he was investigated for all three of those underlying crimes. And guess what, folks? No evidence of any wrongdoing was found at all for all three. All three of them. So, he had a misdemeanor elevated to a felony over a crime that he did not commit, folks. I call that fake charges, as a matter of fact. Hey, you can say what you want. You can buy into the nonsense. I don't know if you guys followed that trial, but it was utter nonsense. It was garbage. The prosecution's whole case hinged upon a convicted liar. That whole thing was just a sham. It was just an utter sham. They've tried to go after Donald Trump. And now these very senators that kept their mouth shut during that whole process, and as a matter of fact, were cheering it on. Absolutely cheering it on, and while saying nothing about the impropriety coming out of the Biden DOJ, as we have been recently finding out about, right? And the Obama DOJ, as a matter of fact. But more specifically, the Biden DOJ was spying on senators. Like, what? What are you talking about? We covered that yesterday. A little bit late to the party on that one, but we covered that yesterday. Now they're going after these people, right? Once again, folks, you know, you must pay the Pied Piper every once in a while, at least. If you're going to go after people, right, like they say, if you take a shot at the king, you bet not miss. And guess what? They missed. And now they are feeling the pressure from the response. And they are doing everything they can to drum all this up as this is just political retribution. Well, you know what? If it was political retribution, it would be fake charges. There would be no evidence of any wrongdoing. But you know what? Y'all can run with that narrative, but it doesn't align with logic. And I can break this down real simply like this, folks. It doesn't align with logic because, hang on just a second, don't you think that Donald Trump's main political opponent would have been Joe Biden? Would have been Kamala Harris, Gavin Newsom, J.B. Pritzker? Don't you think any one of those four would be more of a political rival than Letitia James? Don't you think? Oh, well, they don't have any evidence of any wrongdoing, so guess what? They can't go after those people. Don't you think if this was just simply political retribution, that Donald Trump would look at the field of Democrats and see, hang on, there's no leader here, but who? Who is the top contender for leader? And go after that person and make up charges like the Biden DOJ did. Don't you think that would be a better play? But instead, Donald Trump is going after insignificant worms like Adam Shifty Schiff. Like, do you think he really cares about Adam Schiff? I mean, Schiff lies. He's talked about Adam Schiff before because Adam Schiff has smeared Donald Trump. Adam Schiff oversaw one of the committees that smeared Donald Trump, right? The Russia hoax or whatever. Adam Schiff was right there lying to the American people day after day after day after day after day. So of course he's going to talk crap. But once again, folks, you look at actually what's going on, put on your critical thinking caps instead of just playing partisan games here and think about things for a second. Don't you think the Democrats are kind of in the hole right now and they're doing anything and everything they can to get themselves out of a hole? They're screaming, oh, it's a fascist regime, political retribution. The instant Donald Trump gets his ear shot, They don't stop the rhetoric at all. They continue to call him a Nazi. They continue to call him a fascist. And he's not going after most of those people. He's going after the people that actually broke the law. Once again, you've got to clean up the mess, right? Every once in a while, the street sweeper comes around and cleans up your neighborhood and cleans the roads, because they need to be cleaned from time to time, folks. And right now in America, it is time to clean the streets. It's time to go through the swamp, drain the water out of the swamp, find all of the swamp monsters, and go and have some sort of extermination crew come in and exterminate the swamp monsters, if you will. And I think that's what we have going on here. And it has nothing to do with political retribution. I love it, folks. I just love it. Because you know what? If there was no evidence of a crime, most of the federal judges, right, like Pam Bondi said, that's a very liberal grand jury. Do you think they would really indict one of their own unless there was evidence? There must be evidence of wrongdoing. There must be some sort of fact-based evidence that can actually point to a crime, and there must be a crime committed. You know, they say you can indict a ham sandwich, but that's not necessarily true, folks. It's not necessarily true, especially when you have a skewed grand jury. It is what it is. But I'm loving this because it's time to clean house. And I think that's what Donald Trump is doing. He promised it in his first term, didn't deliver. And he got criticized heavily for doing so. And he said, not again. Not again. Especially coming from his base. His base criticized him heavily for that. For not draining and cleaning up the swamp monster. So he's doing it, folks. But I think I've rambled on for long enough. I want you guys to let me know what y'all think about all this down in the comment section. Blows my mind. It absolutely does. And I love every single second, y'all. Every single second. But you guys do me a favor. Smash that like button for me. Subscribe if you're new around here. Share this video anywhere and everywhere that you can with anybody and everybody that you know, including the homeless guy on the corner with a sign that says, "The end is nigh." Share this with him, because that is one of the best ways to help this channel grow, folks. And click that join button. Sign up and become a member. That's also a really good way to help this channel expand and grow. Be a team member, if you will. But you guys remember that God has a plan for all of us. You may not know what that plan is. You may not see that plan, but it's there. And he loves each and every one of you out there. So y'all try to have a good day and stay legitical. Peace.